Pastor James Maloney is such an amazing person, but the one who raised him up was the Golden Candlestick Intercessor. And when Pastor James Maloney published this book, the book The Golden Candlestick Intercessor was not actually written by Pastor James Maloney himself. However, by the time Pastor James Maloney brought out that book, all those who had prayed as the Golden Candlestick Intercessors had already passed away. They were all quite elderly. Because from before he was even born, God had told people, I will bring forth such a person, so you must pray for him. And so they began praying for him from that time. That's why these intercessors were already quite advanced in age. So Pastor James Maloney wrote about this in his book. He wrote that the books these people had written were sometimes submerged in water, sometimes burned by fire, and that he gathered whatever remained diaries detailing how they prayed each day, records of every meeting they held. After removing what had been washed away by water, burned by fire, lost to time, or torn apart, he used the rest to write the book, The Golden Candlestick Intercessors. That's why the book, The Golden Candlestick Intercessors, was published in 3 volumes. So when you look at this, you realize just how important intercession is in raising up truly remarkable people. If you've listened to this, it should be clear in your mind now just how important the intercession of a single person can be. Right? Because before I came up here, I looked at the proportion of religions among the world's population, and Christians make up 30% of the global population. Then among all religious people, out of that 30% who are Christians, how many truly understand the spiritual world, the importance of intercession, the Holy Spirit, and the real significance of our intercession? Out of that 30% of the world's population, what percentage do you think that would be? Right? So those who are truly awake and constantly praying, I think they make up less than 10% of that 30%. That's why if people like this don't gather and intercede, God's children will be killed, attacked, hurt, robbed, and destroyed in an instant. Isn't that so? Do you understand, everyone? Yes. That's why our intercession is so important. For example, it's extremely important for these 2 people to face each other and intercede for one another. And we can even intercede for distant relatives we hadn't thought of through speaking in tongues. No one but God knows when or how something will open up in my husband's business. But it's through powerful intercession that we can open the way and block all the satanic forces that try to interfere. But sometimes we say, hey, everything will happen in God's timing. That's actually a phrase I don't really like. Because for me, God's timing is always today. I believe God's timing is always today. That timing is the very day we take a step forward, which is today. It only begins when we start today. Yes, some people say, brother, I think you would do really well if you did this work. Brother, why don't you give this a try? Brother, you have this kind of talent. God has given you this kind of talent. But that's not it. I'm waiting for God's timing. I've seen people spend their entire 20s and 30s like that. Then they end up not making any money, wasting all those years. And by the time they realize it and try to do something, it's far too late. The world these days is changing at the speed of light. Because of this, it's really important for us to intercede for one another, and especially for family members to pray for each other. A husband should intercede for his wife, a wife for her husband, and parents and children should all pray for one another. For example, you might think, I really want to pray for my dad, but he doesn't even believe. So what happens then? They just end up going to hell. My own parents who gave birth to me. That's why all of us have a calling to intercede for those entrusted to us, for the people we know. But the reason we can't always stay alert and intercede for them is because just living on this earth is already so hard. Even just standing on our own is difficult. Even just dealing with our own work brings so much stress. And if we're not careful, the competition is so fierce that we end up losing out. We say, God, with this faith, I will do great things for your kingdom, so please give me some money. How great would it be if money just magically appeared when we said things like that? But that's not how it works. No matter how strong your faith is, money doesn't just come to you while you do nothing. In any case, what this means is that we have to live with a faith that is accompanied by action. When we take action, God helps us through people and various circumstances, gives us the strength to do what we can. And when we overcome those challenges, He gives us even more strength to accomplish greater things. But when we do this, there definitely needs to be someone interceding for us. Isn't that right? Yeah. For example, I can see a few people here who have come. These people are truly chosen by God. But, for instance, if we say that Christians make up 30% of the world's population, then we who are called to reach the remaining 70% are all chosen ones. Isn't that so? But even though we are the chosen ones, we are unable to fully realize our potential. We worry about how the world sees us. We have our own circumstances, and we're busy just trying to make a living and have to work. But then, when would I ever have time to intercede for someone? And even if I were to intercede, I don't even know how I should pray. And even when we fail or have things taken from us, we don't know why we're failing or why things are being taken away. Even when my own family, my flesh and blood, suddenly gets cancer and is dying, I don't know why they're dying or why they got cancer. Hey, these days anyone can get cancer. Every household has at least one person with cancer. People think this way, but if you don't know the spiritual secrets, you'll just keep living like that. There is a reason for getting cancer. A reason for losing money. Is it because I lack spiritual discernment that my money is being taken away? No, that's not it. Of course, it's true that we lack spiritual discernment, but it's also because there's no intercession for us. And even though I lack spiritual discernment, through many mistakes I make, God allows us to step out and move forward. But first, rather than just repeating those mistakes, it's more important for us to become stronger, stay alert, pray, and gain understanding. Right? To do that, it's really important for us to always gather and intercede for one another. But honestly, there are so few people who truly open up deep intercession for others. But one day, as I was just starting to learn about the spiritual world from the physical world, I realized I needed to be more open financially. And I was in a situation where I needed to get out quickly. Because all sorts of evil circumstances were pressing down on me, completely surrounding me. I wondered, how can I get out of this situation? How could someone intercede for me? As I was thinking about all this, I said, God, and at that time our church was completely shattered. I told you about this. At our church, the two pastors, the senior pastor and this other pastor, got into a legal dispute, and the elders were split in half, the congregation all left, and the church was completely dissolved. I left the church in that state. So there was really no one I could pray with. I was completely alone, utterly isolated. But right now, I'm in such an evil and difficult situation, like I'm being dragged by the hair and I need to get out of here, but there's no one who can intercede for me. And even if I had stayed at that church, all those people were just religious people. They were just religious people who went to church on Sundays, sat there, shared some fellowship with the pastor, and then went back home, so there was no one who could offer spiritual prayer for me. So I asked God, what should I do? And just then, someone happened to come from America. He came from America, and what was really amazing was that just like in today's sermon, everything just clicked. What happened was, there was a pastor from a certain church. There were about 50 people in a group chat tent. He said that a pastor from America was looking for a place to stay for a month. He asked, "Is there anyone among you who could lend a room for a month?" That's what he said. But I actually had a place available. So I thought, if I do this, it might be a bit of a hassle. I kept debating with myself. Should I do it or not? Should I do it or not? And then I just raised my hand. I said I would do it. So the next day, they came to the place I had and moved right in. So that night, I turned on the lights for them, helped them get settled so they could sleep. And the next morning, I bought some coffee and went to the place. There, the two pastors and the one Jewish man were together. But then they said to me, "Come sit here for a moment." They said, "We were on a plane for 14 hours and we're so tired that we just wanted to sleep. But God kept making us pray for you, so none of the three of us got a wink of sleep." They continued, "Tell us what's going on, what's happening with you right now." That's what they said. So at that moment, I shared everything about how much I was being held captive by Satan. You know, sometimes we all go through times like that, when it feels like Satan has a grip on the back of your neck. After I shared all of that, they said, "We'll intercede and pray for you." And that's how it all started. So while they stayed for approximately a month, I personally drove them around quite a bit. And through these shared experiences, we genuinely grew very close. They also offered heartfelt prayers for me, but then unfortunately they ended up leaving. But one of them, a Jewish woman, when we went to the Unification Observatory, we all spread out a bit and each prayed while looking toward North Korea. There were about 5 of us who went together. But after a while, when I looked over, it was as if this Jewish woman had just teleported. So her body was just standing there, but she had teleported and entered North Korea. The rest of us sat at the table and waited for about 40 to 50 minutes until she came back to us. After about 40 or 50 minutes, she returned and started writing down the names of the people she had met in North Korea. She said she met that woman, talked about various things, and shared everything. It was truly astonishing. Even the name was a typical Korean name. She really had met a woman. But after everyone had left, God spoke to me and said, Youngmi, entrust your intercessory prayer to that Jewish person. So I said, all right, God. But at that time, she had divorced her husband and was living alone. She was only living with her children. So, of course, she would need money, right? So then God told me to entrust this person with intercessory prayer for me. And I said, okay, God, this person will surely ask me, can you pray an intercessory prayer for me just once? And I could say, sure, I'll do it. But if it's just once, how deep of a prayer could I really offer? But because I was in a state of being so bound up, I really needed intercessory prayer. So I asked God, how much should I send to this person each month? When I asked God, I felt in my heart that I should send about $1,000 so that this person could get by. So I asked God, how much should I give to this person? And God told me to send $500. So while I was thinking it would be nice to send about $1,000, I called that person and told them, God told me to entrust you with intercessory prayer for me. So in a way, I'm sharing all my personal matters right now. Then that person said, oh, I felt the same prompting too. So I thought it would be a bit awkward to just say, I'll give you this much. So I said, why don't you ask God about it? Please pray and see if for a certain amount each month you can really pray for me every day. When I said that, the person said, okay. A few days later, I got a call. She said, Youngmi, God told me to pray for you and receive $500 a month. That's what she said. So God told her to receive $500. So this person also prayed alone in America and was told to receive $500, right? Okay. Then from now on, I will send you $500 every month. So please pray for me every day for me, my husband, and my child. So this person prayed for me every single day. Sometimes she would say, God gave me this message. He wants you to do this. Last night, while I was praying for you, I saw a certain heaven open up for you. A door will open, so you should start this. As she started giving me this kind of advice, I began to take steps, one by one, to break free from what was holding me back. After exactly 1 year, she reunited with her husband, from whom she had been separated for a while. And when she told him, I think you should try this business, he replied, I've never done business before, but I'll really give it a try. So he said, all right, go ahead and do it. I told him, I'll help you, so give it a try. And thanks to that, the business has really taken off now. In this way, both she and I were able to create a win-win situation. She helped me get out of my difficult circumstances. And as she also overcame her own struggles, we both ended up winning together. That's how I came to realize just how important intercessory prayer is. And of course for myself as well, although we tend to value things in terms of money. I would think, how much do I earn in a month and how could I possibly give this away just for praying? But God simply told me to give. And I wondered, is this really something I just received? If that's the case, then none of us would ever take on any kind of responsibility. For example, if someone were to say, Director, my family is going through such a hard time right now, could you pray for me? Then I would say, yes, then please give it to me. And then you would write your prayer request for me on the offering envelope. Then I take that and pray for all of it. But I can't fast and pray for several days or for a month or two just for one person. That's why, because of how much my husband and I have changed through a year of intercessory prayer from someone else, I know just how important intercessory prayer is.